I was 14 hours out of the Calaro way station when the hail came in. Not to me, specifically. That was the thing I had to sit with for a moment before I did anything about it. The signal wasn't addressed. It wasn't tight beam, wasn't encrypted, wasn't routed through any relay I had a license to use. It was wide-band, a flat emergency sweep, the kind of broadcast you throw into open space when your directional array is gone and you're hoping something, anything, is close enough to catch the scatter. Whoever sent it had aimed it at nothing and everything at once. It landed in my corridor because my corridor was where I happened to be. I ran the Cauldron's Promise on the Veth Calaro milk run. Veth Passage is a way station in a district most charts label as a transit buffer. Not claimed, not particularly monitored, not the kind of place the big carriers fight over. We hauled grain, compressed machine parts, climate control equipment for colony outposts that didn't raid a dedicated supply chain, me and 3 crew. The Promise was 32 years old, and looked it, except in the compartments you didn't get to see unless you knew what to ask for, and nobody ever asked the right questions. I pulled up the hail's origin trace, 14 minutes of elapsed bounce time, which put the source roughly 40,000 kilometers off my starboard bow, slightly off axis. I cross-referenced the signature against my registry. The drive signature wasn't Earth pattern, wasn't any coalition carrier I'd logged, wasn't anything in the commercial tables. The hull profile that came back from the passive scan was a cruiser-class vessel, something designed for interstellar patrol, something with considerably more firepower than I was supposed to have, sitting completely dead in the transit lane with no engine output and no navigational lights. The hail was still transmitting. The same looped message, over and over, in a frequency band I wasn't supposed to be monitoring at all. I had Pell, my comms operator, clean up the audio. What came out was a voice, clipped, in obvious pain, issuing a position report and a status call in a language that wasn't any of mine. But the structure was clear. It was a distress format. I'd heard enough of them to know the shape, position, severity, nature of incapacitation, request for assistance. The request for assistance component was addressed, as far as I could parse it, to someone called the Veth Sector Authority, which was not me, and did not exist in my charts as anything with a working comms address. Whatever they'd been trying to hail, they'd missed. Whatever they'd been trying to reach, they hadn't. They'd reached me instead. I sat with that for slightly less than a minute, which I think was the appropriate amount of time to consider it. Then I told Pell to open a response channel on the same frequency and I said, in standard transit band, Cauldron's Promise, independent freighter, Veth Calaro run, I have your distress signal. I am altering course to your position. Estimated arrival 41 minutes. There was a pause long enough that I thought the transmitter on their end might be damaged. Then the voice came back, lower and slower than before, working through what I could only assume was a translation layer. The words came out rough at the edges, but they were clear enough. This channel was not directed to your registry class. No, I said. It wasn't directed to anyone in particular. It landed here. I'm what's here. Another pause. You are a supply carrier. That's what it says on the registry. I cut the channel and told my engineer, Doss, to start warming up the equipment in compartment 6. He gave me the look he always gave me when I said that, which was the look of a man who was professionally accustomed to not asking follow-up questions. Then he went aft. The cruiser came into visual range at 38 minutes. She was a big ship, swept-back geometry, built for hard transit, the kind of hull that didn't care much about looking approachable. The drive assembly at her stern was sheared along the bottom third. One sensor array was gone. Hull vents cycled on her port side. Atmosphere issues, managed manually. She wasn't going anywhere under her own power. I docked along her starboard emergency lock, which took some doing, because her maneuvering thrusters were also degraded, and the Promise is not what you'd call nimble. But we got there. Doss ran the seal checks, and then I went through the lock myself. The captain of the cruiser was waiting in the corridor on the other side. His name, as best I could render it, was Aerith Voss. He was taller than me by a good deal, and he had the kind of bearing you only get from people who are used to giving orders that don't get questioned. Except that right now, he was bracing one shoulder against the corridor wall and holding his left arm at an angle that told me something in it was broken. His crew, what was left of them, were visible further down the passage. Some of them were on their feet, more of them weren't. He looked at me for a moment. I looked back. "You are the commanding officer of the supply carrier," he said. His translation layer had had time to sharpen. The words came cleaner now. "Sable Marin, yes. We did not hail your vessel specifically. No, I know. Your directional array is wrecked. You swept wide, and I was in the cone." He absorbed that. "You diverted a transit run to respond to a misdirected signal. Your ship isn't moving, and you have people down. Didn't seem like the time to be particular." He was quiet for a moment. Not the silence of someone who didn't understand. The silence of someone who understood and wasn't sure what to do with the understanding. I didn't give him long to think about it. I told Pell to start bringing the medical supplies through, and waved Doss up with the drive assessment kit. Doss came through with 2 more crew behind him, carrying cases that weren't labeled, because we had a standing arrangement with the VETH transit coordinator that certain things didn't require labeling. Arath Voss watched Doss begin the drive assessment, and then he watched the unlabeled cases, and then he looked at me. "Your manifest," he said. "When I reviewed your registry class, it listed grain, climate equipment, machine components. That's accurate. The equipment your crew is deploying is not grain." "No," I agreed. "Compartment 6 runs on a different manifest. Older paperwork, the kind that doesn't update automatically." He was a careful thinker, even hurt. I could see him working through it. "You carry medical and technical equipment not listed on your public registry. I carry what the run requires. Sometimes the run requires things the registry doesn't cover. That is not a standard operating profile for a supply freighter." "No," I said, "it isn't." I left him to think about that and went to help Pell with the medical assessment. We had a compact trauma station in compartment 6. Field grade, nothing a hospital ship would brag about, but it had a full bone-setting apparatus, a pharmaceutical suite, and a diagnostic scanner that didn't ask questions about the species it was imaging. My crew had run it in worse conditions. It took 6 hours. The drive wasn't repairable in the field. It would need a dry dock. But we stabilized it well enough that the cruiser could make transit at reduced speed and reach Calaro under her own power with a 2-hour margin before the damage progressed to irreversible. We got 11 crew members who were down into stable condition. 2 needed the surgical kit, which Doss ran better than I'd have expected when I hired him. He had useful history. When it was done, Arath Voss met me back at the lock. He was standing straighter now. His arm was splinted, and he'd had something for the pain. He had the look of a man recalibrating an assumption he'd held for a long time. "You should not have been in this lane," he said. "The VETH corridor is not an Earth transit route." "I had a way station delivery," I said. "Calaro is Calaro. You go where the cargo goes. Our distress signal was not aimed at Earth." "I know. You said." "I am saying it again," he said, "because I want you to understand that I understand it. We sent the signal at the sector authority. We had no way of knowing the array was compromised. We did not ask Earth for assistance. We did not ask you for anything." "Right. And yet," I agreed. He was quiet for a moment. "Then, what do I log as the official designation for your vessel? Your registry class says freighter. Your equipment says otherwise." I thought about it. "Log it as a freighter," I said. "That's accurate enough." He held my gaze for 3 or 4 seconds. Then he gave me something I didn't have a name for. Not a salute, not a bow, more like a settling of his entire frame into a single still instant of acknowledgement. "Freighter," he said. I went back through the lock and took the promise back onto the transit heading. We were 7 hours late to Calaro. The way station coordinator complained, which was his professional obligation. I filed the deviation as an unscheduled detour for navigational reasons, which was accurate, and sent the cargo manifest ahead so he'd have something to do while he waited. The cruiser made Calaro 2 hours later. I saw her in the dry dock queue when I left. The hail had gone nowhere in particular. It had landed where I was because I had a delivery to make, and the VETH corridor was the fastest lane. I filed the medical expenditures under routine maintenance, and didn't think about it again for a long time.